All right, so I'm going to briefly show the people here. Do you have a camera back there too, right? So when I get back there, I'll show it with the camera to our friends at home. Big brown bat, brown and black in color. These guys are camouflaged to wood. They frequently live in dead trees. They'll also go under the bark of trees. They will go in caves too. And then they will live in buildings. So they'll be under the eaves of a house, or sometimes we have wooden signs on our buildings. They will, they're pretty flexible. Big brown bats live all over North America. Yeah, I'll catch you on the up. So we show our friends at home the big brown bat. Eh? Her favorite food in the wild would be a beetle. Yeah. So while you get your phone out, we're going to hit over here. They eat a lot of different kinds of insects, though. They'll eat a moth. They'll eat a flying termite. They'll eat a mosquito. But if they can find the beetles, the crunch, they do kind of like that quite a bit. All right, I'm coming. Oh, got another paparazzi, my friend. She was actually born in captivity. Her mother was injured while pregnant, and I didn't realize the mother was pregnant. And I think that possibly the medications caused a birth defect, so her eyes never opened. This individual bat is blind, and a blind bat cannot live in the wild. Yeah. And we'll talk more about that kind of stuff in a minute. I'm going to show you the wing, and I can't do that and hold the mic. Ah, there we go. All right. So she has quite a wide wing. So she's going to look a lot larger in flight. She's going to be about the size of this toy if she was out flying. All right. I'm going to put her back in her little show box with her friend. She's going to climb to the top with her thumbs. She'll then turn over and hang by her feet. Usually they cuddle, and once in a while they talk about it. Yeah, big brown bats like to cuddle. All right. Here she is. Thank you. All right. Let's see. I'm going to take my gloves off here. There. Okay, so let's talk about bats. So what do you think? Related to the rodents? Kind of look like little mice, right? How about us? Okay, you're thinking the mammal thing, aren't you? Yeah. Past being a mammal, I don't really think of myself as very close to a mouse, and actually neither are the bats. So if we look at how mammals are related to each other, if we come up the trunk of the main trunk of the tree, we got to come over to the left to find the bat. If we come up that trunk, we have to make a right-hand turn to find the rodents. Interestingly to me, if you stay on that branch with the rodents and you go farther, you find us, which means by DNA, we are actually closer to the rodents than the bats are. The bats are more closely related to the animals over here, probably closest to the hedgehogs and shrews, but I like to call them itty-bitty flying kitties. Now, they are mammals, and as mammals, they're quite different from birds. And one of those differences is the bones. Birds have that honeycombing in their bones to make their bones extra light. Bats don't. They have marrow in their bones like other mammals, which means their bones have to be extremely fine in order to be light enough to fly. And they are the mammals that fly. All mammals that fly are called bats, and they fly with the same bones we have in our arm and hand. So if we compare ourselves, the bat has an upper arm, an elbow, and a forearm. So it's kind of like the bats making muscles. Yeah? They have a wrist, thumb, and elongated fingers. 4 fingers plus the thumb. And when they fly, oh, they're in the order Chiroptera. Sorry, missed that. And in Greek, Chiroptera, hand wing. And when they fly, it's like swimming the butterfly stroke. So as we watch this bat come into the screen, you can see how it rolls its shoulders. So again, very different from a bird, right? Birds have strong chest muscles. Mammals have stronger shoulder muscles. You can see how they can bend the knuckles on its fingers, changing the shape of the wing. And skin from the pinky finger all the way down to the ankle. Now, that's a type of a fruit bat or a flying fox from the continent of Africa. One of our most common myths. Yeah, bats aren't blind. Well, that big brown bat is, but for the most part, bats are not blind. They have eyes. They see with their eyes. Some of them see better than we do. But of course, they're hunting at night. And so sonar becomes important. The outliers are the fruit bats. Fruit bats see in full color. They see into the ultraviolet, like some of the fruit-eating birds. And they don't use echolocation for hunting. But most bats, black, white, gray, maybe a little green, but not all the colors like us. And it's dark. And so they're using their sonar or their echolocation, and those are pulses of sound. Ding, ding, ding. I'm getting an echo behind me. I'm wondering if it's my computer. Okay. Starts out slow. Bing, bing, bing. And then it gets faster. Bing, 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 bing. And then it gets very fast. Bing, 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 bing. And that last part, that's when they decide if they want to eat it. Oh, or not. So we're going to listen to this little California myotis. It's all fast. But what you might notice is in the middle, it's the fastest. And then it slows back up. And that really fast part in the middle is the feeding buzz. But we can't hear those sounds. They are way too high for people's ears. And that's a little weird to think about. So I have this little app on my phone. It plays high sound. And I'm going to play a tone. It's going to sound like, it's a little obnoxious. When you can hear it, I want you to raise your hand. As soon as it stops, drop your hand back down. All right. Most people, not all, but most people can hear 5 kilohertz. That's how high that was, 5. Yep, we lost you, didn't we? Yeah, that was 10. And at 10, we begin to lose some of our adults, especially some of our older guys. And I don't think it's necessarily tied to like sex linked. I think it might be more tied to what your ears have experienced over time. You know, maybe loud machinery or something like that. So that was 10 kilohertz. On or off? Our youngins in the back are like, yeah, I think I hear it. That was 15. At 15, pretty much anybody over the age of 40 usually doesn't hear it. You heard it at the very beginning, but it went. Then you stopped, and they kept hearing it. So I think what happened is when it first turns on, it's a little bit. It's like low, and then it goes up. So you might have caught the very beginning. At 15, like I said, it's getting up there for many adults. That was 17. At 17, kids and teens usually still hear it. Yeah, but it's the rare adult that can hear 17. Um, if I'm with really young kids, like kindergartenish, they might hear 19. Top of the human hearing range is considered to be 20. I've never met anybody, even a kid, that can hear 20. Bats echolocate higher than that. So in order to hear bat echolocation, we use devices like this. It's called a bat detector. And all it is a frequency changer. So it's picking up high sound and cutting it, reducing it. So playing in the background on my phone is 22. When I turn on my bat detector, 22 becomes 2.2. Yeah. That's how we hear the bats. These guys here, they all echolocate right around 30. People don't hear 30 kilohertz. Question? How far away can my device pick up the sound? About the top of sort of average trees, not the redwoods, but kind of neighborhood trees. Yeah. Or when the bats are flying out from the bridges, they're maybe a little farther away than that heater is from me, the back of the room, and then they're up. Um, this little guy, this California myotis, it echolocates around, what are you at? 50 kilohertz. Yeah. Um, Even the dogs and cats don't usually hear that. Yeah. How do they make the sound? It's through their larynx. There are bats that echolocate using the larynx, that the sound comes out their nose. You've maybe seen pictures of the leaf-nosed bats. Our bats' echolocation comes directly out of their mouth. There are a few species of fruit bats that don't truly echolocate, but use pulses of sound with wing beats in caves to be able to navigate in the cave. Yeah. Yeah, so would it sound like the recording if I was using the bat detector? Sort of, yeah. So I'll hear at night tick, 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 and I'll be like, cool, the bats are out. And then I might hear tick, 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 zzz, tick, 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 and I'm like, yeah, it caught the bug. There are fancier devices that also can help to identify because each species has different patterns of sound. Um, I use this because I can drop it and step on it by accident and pick it up and it still works, right? But the fancier ones are fun. The ones that are relatively affordable, Echo Touch is probably the most affordable, most fun. It's kind of like Merlin, though, where most of the time it's right, but sometimes it's telling you something's there that you're like, we're not in that range, right? So it's not perfect. Yeah. They have a larynx. Voice box, I don't know the difference between a voice box and a larynx. All right. In this video, you're going to hear echolocation because a bat detector was used. You're going to see a bat come in, a moth come up. And I want you to decide if the bat catches the moth or if the moth goes into the tree. Uh-oh, there's our sound. Ha! What happened to our sound? What did you mute that made it so we can't hear anymore? Uh-oh. You did something. Oh, now we don't even have a screen. Ah. All right. Try again. Okay. I think this might be my last one with sound. So then we can mute after that. Oh, that was that one. All right, here we go. There's the moth. Watch the moth. What do you think? It went in the tree. What I don't know is if it missed or changed its mind. right? Yeah, yeah. The bat can tell what kind of moth it is, and maybe it didn't like that flavor. So watch again. Yeah, I think he changed his mind. All right, let's see what the next one does. Did you hear the zzz, the feeding buzz? Listen again. All right, question in the back. It is. Yeah, that's why it's black and white. Yeah. That I don't know. Um, my, yeah, I don't know. It was given to me through a biologist that was doing work in Texas, but yeah, I mean, they get, we have 17 species in Northern California, and Texas has like, I don't know, 35 species or something. Yeah. Say it again. So, so the question is, do they have to increase their the speed in order to catch the insect? The the m- the more pulses, the better the detail, and so therefore they'll have a better idea of what it is that they're catching or not. And that becomes important when they're in leaf clutter, especially because they don't want to like chomp on a leaf, right? And a leaf fluttering is going to be like a moth fluttering, that kind of thing. So as they're closing in, they speed up to get more detail. Yep, yep. All right, I'm not moving forward. Me either. There I am. All right. Well, while he fiddles with that. All right. Yep. And full screen. You can do it down in the bottom corner too. There you go. All right, good. And you can get rid of the sound now. You mute it. Excellent. All right. Yeah, right over water. Great place. No, no, we're not going forward again. Eh, nope. Nope. We're not going forward anymore. Okay, anybody got another question while we're trying to figure this out? Where did the exhibiting animals live when they're not in their show boxes? They live at my house. They have a room, and in the room are several cages, and the cages are large enough for them to have room to explore, pouches to hide in, bark, that kind of stuff, food and water bowls, but not large enough for flying because none of these bats can fly. And if they try, they will injure themselves. Yeah, I do. The question was, how do they eat? Do I put bugs in a dish for them? Yes. I train them to eat mealworms from a bowl. And then once they have learned that skill, not all of them do learn it, but most of them do. Yeah. And I have 26 ambassador bats. So my desire is for them to feed themselves. Yes. Are they active at night? They are more active at night than they are during the day. That said, bats are much like cats, so they will rest anywhere from 18 to 20 hours in a 24-hour time period. Um, yeah, so they're not active all night. Well, I do rescue as well, but I have 26 exhibiting animals, 26 bats. And then right now in rescue, I'm counting cages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that hopefully will be released. Um, she knows. Yeah, she knows me. She was born in captivity. But all of them adjust pretty quick. Are we going to try it again? Ha! All right. All right. So worldwide, there's about 1,500 different species of bat. And that's pretty impressive when you consider there's just under 7,000 kinds of mammals in the world. So this chart shows us all the different kinds of mammals divided by their order, their large grouping, and a lot of that shows up in the teeth. So apparently it is a really good adaptation to have your 2 front teeth grow all your life, because that's the rodents. And there are a lot of rodents in the world. Um, but the next big group are the mammals that can fly, with 1,511 currently named species. We have 47 species in the US, 26 in California, and 17 in the northern part of our state. Bats live on every continent except Antarctic. It's too cold. There's no bugs ever, right? But everywhere else, if there are insects, there's going to be bats eating those insects, sometimes seasonally. So you get to a place like Alaska, where it's awfully cold in the winter. Some of those bats will migrate, some hibernate, and they're just not active during the cold. And then when the insects come back, the bats are active again. Yeah. And then in the tropical areas, that's where you pick up more diversity in everything. And so that's where you'll see things like some of the bats that eat fruit or take nectar and pollinate, go hunting for meat, or the big de vampire bats, which are about the size of our pallid bat. Vampire bats are not a big animal. But of course, here, ours eat the insects and sometimes other invertebrates. Yeah. And here is one way they can catch a moth in flight. So watch as this bat reaches with the hand wing, drops it into that tail membrane, yeah, rolls up in a ball and eats it. Right? So here comes this moth. This is filmed at the University of Colorado, where they study bats. And this is also Colorado. Yeah, that's a full bat flip. Pretty impressive. Yeah. And this is a bat from Europe that eats spiders. I like how it flies forward and backward. And well, yeah, it doesn't want to get that sticky web on itself, right? So back to Colorado. On the end of that string is a smashed tiger moth. And the question that they were looking at was, why do tiger moths get away more often than other moths? But what I like about the picture is how well you can see the tail. Because often people don't realize bats have tails. Bats that hunt have tails. The fruit bats, they're like us, they just have the remnant. But most bats, tail, legs, and all that skin, that tail membrane, I like to call it the catcher's mitt. And interestingly, what they found with this tiger moth study was that tiger moth produced sound back at the bat and jam echolocation. Yeah, yeah. Now, the little Mexican free-tailed bats, which are quite a common species throughout about half of the United States, they are native. These little guys are saving farmers billions of dollars annually by consuming crop pests. So they're reducing pesticide use, they're reducing crop loss. I'll show the free-tail a little later so you get an idea of why that is called that. But they're eating a lot of the agricultural pests. So the corn earworm moth, of course, its larval stage can be devastating to corn. There's a variety of beetles that eat. I particularly have a problem with these guys because I like watermelon. In our apples, coddling moth. And this is an armyworm moth, and the larval stage is eating on the rice there. All right, I want to run through a few of our Northern California species. These are our little guys, a couple of our little guys, the California myotis and the little brown bat. Both are very, very small. The little brown bat, comparing to the big brown bats weigh around 18 grams. Little brown bat weighs around 7 or 8 grams. The California bat weighs about 3.5 grams. Yeah, tiny bat. Yeah. And yeah, an LBB or LBJ, little brown job. Yeah, so unfortunately, little brown bat ends up being a catch-all, but it is an actual species. Yeah, Myotis lucificus. Sometimes they call them the Lucies. Yeah, but it does end up sort of being a catch-all. It's a little brown bat. Little bats eat little bugs, so these guys are out there after the mosquitoes, the gnats, the midge, some of the small moths and beetles. Big brown bat, bigger bat. It is a true North American species going into Canada and Central America also. They're across the whole continental United States. They, again, like wood. They like beetles, moth, termites, all kinds of things. They can glean or pick insects off of plants in addition to doing those flips in the air. The pallid bat, a big blonde bat. Pallid bat is a western species, and depending where in its range it is, ours are a little darker. You get down into Baja or even into San Diego, they're much lighter in color, the desert, right? Around here, they're eating potato bugs and grasshoppers. In the desert, they're often after scorpion, which is pretty darn amazing, and they are our state bat. Yep, California state bat, the golden bat. Yep. The little Mexican free-tailed bats, again, native to about half the U.S. and in through Central America. Ironically, in Mexico, they do not call them Mexican, but whatever. They also sometimes are called Brazilian free-tailed bats, same species. We have the subspecies. These guys have figured us out. Mexican free-tailed bats frequently live in our buildings and bridges. They are historically a cave and hollowed out dead tree kind of species, but they like bricks and cement, and this is a roofing tile. They live in massive colonies. That picture up on the top right, that's Bracken Cave outside of San Antonio, Texas, with an estimated 20 million in the summer in that one cave, and there are other caves in that hill country. Yeah. The ones that are in Northern California, we don't think they actually leave the state. They do seem to do more of an east-west migration, whereas some of the ones that are closer to the border do move between Central America and the United States. This is where I hang. This is the Yolo Causeway, Highway 80. So Davis is on the left side, Sacramento is on the right. It's a 3-mile bridge. And living under that bridge, up in the little crevices, in the expansion joints of the bridge, are the little Mexican free-tailed bats. And they come out at night to hunt those crop pests. And I can't tell you how often people say to me, there's no bats in Sacramento. So this is 3 p.m., all right? The yellow are flying animals. So those are birds, right? That little blue line right there, that's the Yolo Causeway, that's that bridge. And, as you kind of watch, now UC Davis and UC Santa Barbara are working with Doppler radar to try to track some of this flying, partially because they can go back in time and look at change. So here we are, it's about 7:30. Still got some birds. And there are the bats. Yeah, tell me there's no bats in Sacramento. And now they're dispersing. Of course, as they get more dispersed, it's harder to pick them up with Doppler, but they're going out to the agricultural fields in the surrounding area. Some of them, of course, do still stick in close, but a lot of them disperse all around. Biggest and smallest in the United States happen to live in California. The mastiff bat is a free-tailed bat. So he looks a lot like these girls here, except where they weigh about 10 grams each. He weighed, at the time of that picture, about 80 grams. Yeah, he was a little chunky. And then the little bat next to him, that is a canyon bat. It is the smallest bat in the United States. It weighs just over 2 grams. Yeah. Western red bat, probably our most beautiful species, although they are prima donnas. They're very hard in rescue because anything gets on their fur and they get very upset and stressed, and then they start like grooming their fur out. So they lose fur, they injure their fingertips in caging. We have to be really careful when we have these guys. Red bats and hoary bats both are solitary, so they're living in the trees. The red bats tend to like the deciduous trees. The hoary bats tend to like the evergreens, but there's a lot of crossover. And that means they sometimes get knocked out of the trees by the birds when they're sleeping, and it's daytime. So this hoary bat is under a redwood tree. We got this call, and we said, well, are you sure? Oh, yeah, there's something wrong with this bat. Let me send you the video. Well, that is an absolutely perfectly healthy hoary bat, and that is their defensive, right? Because a jay, scrub jay, for example, will come down and it'll peck at the bird. So it'll throw itself on its back, it flails its wings, it hisses, it clicks, and then often the bird will leave. Bigger issue are house cats. So when, and you know, these are neighborhoods. So I encourage people when they see a hoary bat on the ground to get a nice long broom and just sort of flip it over, and that'll encourage it to jump. Hoary bats fly from the ground just fine. But if a house cat gets them, that's a problem. Yeah. All right, so I've talked about the bats helping the farmers, so let's put some numbers on that. This is mama and baby. So mom's ears, her brown furry body, the pink is the newborn pup. And look how big that baby is, right? Yeah. Mom is gonna eat about the equivalent of her own weight when she's nursing. So 10 grams worth of moth. And moth don't weigh very much. So that means that one bat in one night is eating somewhere between 50 and 100 moth. And if she's eating mosquitoes, she's eating even more, right? But of course, not all those moths are going to lay eggs. So let's say 20 of the moths are going to lay eggs. Each moth can lay around 500 eggs. So that means that one bat in one night is saving that farmer from around 10,000 moth eggs. That's a lot of potential larvae eating the crop. So I chose 20 because if a farmer finds 20 moth in the crop, that farmer might decide pesticides are needed. And not only are pesticides not healthy for us, they're expensive for the farmer. And this actually was last year's number, but with the price of gas right now for airplanes, because most of this is flown on, I'm guessing that number is even higher. So remember the bridge, the Yolo Causeway. Right there, there's a farmer that leases 2,000 acres to grow rice. If he had to spray those fields with pesticides, that would cost him around $200,000. But he doesn't. He says, yeah, there's bugs out there, right? But not enough to cause him problems, and he has never found an armyworm or an armyworm moth, and those are the rice pests. So, yep, we say plant your rice next to 250,000 bats, and they will take care of the bugs. Yeah. So mom's hungry. Her baby is about a third of her weight at birth, and then in about 4 to 5 weeks, that young bat is almost as big as mom. solely on mother's milk. And then they have to learn to fly and they have to learn to hunt. And that's hard. And if they don't build up the fat, they're not going to make it through the winter. It is hard to be a wild animal. They also have to worry about the predators, and we get a tremendous amount of cat-caught bats. And another problem that they run into in our neighborhoods are backyard pools. Bats drink water, and if it's a pond or a creek and they misjudge and fall in, they can swim. They swim, they get themselves out. But if it's a backyard pool, they can't climb the tile. So I encourage people that have pools to put in a wildlife ramp. So then the animals can get themselves out when they fall in. Yeah. I do rescue. I am taking in bats that people find on the ground. If you don't touch it, it won't hurt you. If you don't touch it, it won't bite you or attack you. Bats are not aggressive animals. And if you don't handle the animal, even if that bat is sick, there's no disease you're going to get from the air. But if you pick it up, it will be scared, it may bite. And if it is sick and you handle it, you have exposed yourself to disease. So don't, right? Don't touch any animal without protecting yourself first. If you want to get help for it, we do need it contained. We cannot help a bat we can't find. So put a box or container of some kind over it so the house cats don't get it, the children don't get it. Call Wildlife Rescue. We actually have a volunteer who lives over here in Fort Bragg that is helping us with the bats, which is new for us. So we're very excited. Unfortunately, she was called out of town on business today, so she's not here. If it has to be moved, one should wear gloves, good enough for working with rose thorns, and then a tool to contain it. And the concern, of course, is the possibility of the virus rabies. Rabies is a virus that kills mammals. If a bat gets sick with rabies, it will die. So most aren't sick, but unfortunately you can't tell by looking at them. Worldwide, dogs are the biggest issue for passing rabies on to humans. But in the US, we vaccinate our pets, so we have a pretty good handle on canine rabies. We're worried about feral cats with no vaccines, bat, skunk, and fox as being the most likely to be near people when the animal is sick. And for a bat, it's the bat on the ground that we worry about the most. Bat on the ground, something's up. It could be sick or injured, but it also could have rabies. 1 in 10. Rabies is passed through saliva. So if you don't handle the bat bare-skinned, you don't expose yourself to their saliva, you can keep yourself safe. And if something goes wrong, you wake up in a room and there's a bat in there with you, we have the opportunity in our country for vaccination where many countries don't. So we can keep ourselves safe. We lose 1 to 2 humans a year to rabies in the whole United States. But we vaccinate somewhere between 30 and 60,000 people to exposure to a mammal. And that's not just a bat, that's lots of mammals. We worry about what bats or other wildlife may pass to us, but we need to keep in mind what we pass to them. And in the case of white nose syndrome, this is a fungus from Europe that showed up in the US almost 20 years ago now. With a name like destructans, it might give you an idea of how devastating this is. You can see the white fuzz growing on these bats. It was first identified in New York State in a recreational cave. So the thought is probably the spores came over on someone's gear or maybe hiking boots. And each year it's been spreading. Bats move it as they go on their own migrations, and people move it as we go in and out of their caves. When it gets into caves with the little hibernating bats, they wake up too often during hibernation and they starve to death. They burn up all their calories, and it is continuing to spread. Yeah. The Little brown bat used to be the dime a dozen bat in the East and the Midwest. They have lost 90% of their population in 20 years. The northern long-eared bat in that same geographic region has lost 99% of its population, and we expect it to go extinct. Yeah. So then the question is, what does that mean, right? What are the repercussions? So there was an economist out of Chicago, and he wanted to know. And because of the way it spreads, he could follow the death of the bats. And what he found was when a county, and these are all counties, when a county crashed, if it was a farming community, the pesticide use went up by 30%. When the pesticide use went up by 30%, the human infant mortality rate in those counties went up by 8%. Pesticides are poison, right? They're not good for us, and they're certainly not good for our children. We're a huge agricultural state, but you might notice we look a little different. We don't have those solid counties. We have circles. And that's because the DNA of the fungus has been found in our state. But so far, we have not seen any affected bats. And we don't know why. We don't know if it's just a matter of time or if our climate is different enough. It is an issue of hibernation, and bats in California don't hibernate as long as they do in the East and the Midwest. So we don't know. Best thing we can do is stay out of caves. And if we do go into caves, we need to clean our shoes and gear before we... Okay. Come on, door. I need somebody to help me. Before we go in and after we come out. Bleach kills this, right? So throw 10% bleach spray bottle in your car, spray it on your shoes, and you will help make a difference. I do worry about the insect decline, and it's not just about the bats, the birds, the fish, the frogs. I mean, insects are our baseline. They are also our pollinators and our decomposers. So very concerning worldwide. So what can we do? Well, bat houses give alternative roosting locations for bats. Few kind of rules of thumb, 12 feet and higher. Best if you can put it on a building, freestanding pole, 2 bat houses back to back, or a particularly large one. You can see the size of the woman compared to the bat house, right? She does bat rescue up in Tuolumne County. The barn over there, those are a study that was done in Woodland in the organic walnut orchards. And they found that the bats didn't care about color, but they did care how high it was. They liked them on the east facing, and they didn't go in the ones that were in trees. Yeah. These little things are called pup catchers because bat houses in some of our state can overheat, and the babies will come out and try to cool off. And if they lose their footing, if they fall to the ground, they can't climb back up. And the mother can't carry a pup that size. So the pup catchers just give the babies a chance. This is Beale Air Force Base. That's an osprey nest at the top, 2 bat houses, and this is a predator guard to keep the raccoons from climbing the tree. Few other things when we plant native plants, right? And those that are especially that are encouraging the nocturnal insects, not using pesticides and supporting the farmers that also are making choices about the chemicals that they use. Habitat, when we have the opportunity to provide habitat, or supporting the farmers that use hedgerows and the land trusts, which again are protecting the land. Dark sky, we can make choices in our own lives. We don't have to have our lights on all night long. We know it affects the birds too. We can use motion light because sometimes we do need light, right? We can make sure that there's good downward facing hoods so we're not lighting up the sky, but we're lighting up what we need. And cats, keep your cat inside. All right, we're going to meet the bats, and let's see if I can figure out how to do this. You want to drop the, there's the shit. I'm going to, no, not layout, stop. Okay, Um, okay, later. And that's where I'm going to put the bat. All right. Most of them, so the question is about how a mother teaches the young to hunt and fly. Flight is instinctual, and hunting is also instinctual, except that the mother does teach the young bat where to go. So where's the hunting range, um, and then if they migrate, they also teach them where to go for migration. Sorry, sorry, Zoomland. I just knocked over my camera. One baby once a year for the most part. Yeah, there are some species that give birth to twins, but most of our bats have one baby once a year. How long does it nurse? Depends on the species, how long it nurses. The smaller the species, the shorter the nursing. These bats that are here are all large bats for California. So they're going to nurse 5 or 6 weeks and then wean for another couple of weeks. Did you name your bat? I do not name the bat. And I don't because, can you help me? If we can get that laptop maybe over here so I can see. Yeah, but I can't see what I'm doing. So if you can move that, I don't think I need this. Yeah, that'd be great. That can go to the floor. I think so. And how's our speaker? Okay. Yeah, fix that. That would be great. Detailed bat. She is a full-grown adult, and this is a super, super fast bat. These guys are the speed demons of the bat world. Right? Yep. Let's see. I'll get this down a little bit, maybe. There, maybe. Okay. Look up at the camera. There she is. All right. That's echolocation. Yep. Yeah, that's echolocation. I don't know if our friends at home can hear that or not. Probably not. All right. So she's just putting out her sonar, checking out the world. This is so counterintuitive, the what direction you move the, yeah. I usually use a camcorder, but camcorder doesn't work on Zoom. So the webcam, I'm just not quite as practiced with it. All right, so I'm going to use my little pencil here as a pointer, and we're going to start with the ears. So she has big, round ears that tip down, much like a baseball cap bill, rather than standing up, like a lot of animal ears stand straight up. And that helps with aerodynamics. You may notice also that her ears almost touch right in the center of the forehead, forming sort of that V shape. There's bumps, which are kind of hard to see on the camera, but there are little bumps right along the edge of her ears. Those help with lift or rising as she's flying. Short fur, longer fur would slow her down. Shorter fur, less drag, faster flight. Right? Many adaptations for speed. She has little wrinkly lips. Can we get the focus? Come on. It's one of those autofocus things, and it decides on its own what it thinks it wants to focus on. And you see her little wrinkly lips, kind of? Yeah. Kind of a turned up nose. Yeah. Little wrinkly lips allows her to open her mouth extra wide. These guys are so fast, they often don't bother doing flips to catch bugs. They just grab them like a swallow or a swift with their mouth. Mhm. Um, we have the thumb, right? Elbow, wrist, forearm with a radius and ulna, just like us. And then the finger bones are tucked up against the forearm. Our bats don't wrap their wings around their body like fruit bats do. Our bats keep them folded until it's time to fly. And then when it's time, they can bring that wing on out. And it is long, but not very wide, right? Long and narrow, speed. Swift swallows, again, peregrine falcon, jet plane. Yep. And then let's see the tail of the free, F-R-E-E, free-tailed bat. Yep. So her tail sticks out longer than her tail membrane. She has some control over that. She can bring, I mean, yeah, she's talking about it. She's like, I want to flip the other way. She can stretch that skin out or tuck it away, depending on how she wants to use it, as a rudder or get it out of the way so it's not dragging behind her. Whiskers on her feet. Whiskers are for feeling. She can feel where she's going, backing up in a crack or a crevice. But they also fluoresce in black light, and we don't know why. Yeah. Uh, yeah. It's interesting. And white nose syndrome, the fungus, the pseudogeomyces will also fluoresce in black light. And prior to looking for this fungus, we weren't blacklighting bats, right? So it's a pretty recent discovery and it's not all species that have these little fluorescing hairs. All right, teeth. She has itty bitty carnivore teeth in there. I'm working on it. Interestingly, vampire bat teeth are very differently structured. There we go. Maybe that way. Is that better? Yeah. Sharp all the way back. Good for eating. Moth and mosquito are two very favorites. They also do midges and some of the other little fly species. Where are you going? Um, but her true claim to fame is speed. Mexican free-tailed bat is the fastest mammal on Earth. These guys have been known to go 99 miles an hour. Yeah, beats the cheetah. Yeah. All right, I'm going to bring out the big brown bat next. No, that bat doesn't really like to cuddle. Interestingly, so the question was, does the Mexican free-tailed bat like to cuddle? They live in massive colonies. They should cuddle. They never do in their show bumps. Oh. Don't know why. Maybe they don't like each other. Maybe. I don't know. Oh, nice wing stretch. Yeah. All right. Fuzzy. Yep. Come on. Where am I? Big brown bat. Much furrier. This is the one who is blind. So if you notice her eyes are not open, they never opened after birth. Yeah. But otherwise, great little bat, right? Much different face. Her ears are not together. They're taller and pointy, not round. The big brown bat's muzzle is much more plain-faced. Doesn't have those wrinkles and everything. Bigger all over, and her fur is much longer. Right? Really lovely fur coat. These guys live in most of the United States and parts of Canada and Mexico. So they can do cold, they can do hot, they can do everything in between. They can live in trees, they can live in caves, they can hibernate if they live where it's cold enough. There's no reason to hibernate in Fort Bragg, so they don't. But the ones that are in the Midwest for example, do. So that means they are a bat that is potentially susceptible to white nose syndrome. But they are a larger bat. The little bats are the ones that are hit particularly hard. The bigger bats, like a big brown bat, goes into hibernation with more fat. So its chances of survival are better. Their populations are certainly dropping, but they're not crashing in the same way as the little brown bat, for example, and some of the other small species. These guys have a much wider, broader wing. So they can flip and turn corners, but they are not as speedy. They're not slow. They might go 40 miles an hour, but not 100. Right? And then the tail, no free tail. You can see the, oopsie, skin down to the tip of the tail. Lots and lots of skin on that catcher's mitt, or tail membrane. Right? Yep. And she also doesn't have long hairs on her feet. Yeah. Big brown bats eat a lot of beetle. They eat moth. They eat flying termites. Yeah. What you doing? Do big brown bats migrate? Oh, do any species migrate? Yes. Big browns, I don't know what their hibernation. Most bats that hibernate also migrate to where they're going to hibernate. But I don't know because they don't do it here, and I know more about California species. I don't exactly know what they're doing. Yeah, because they don't need to here. Yeah. Average lifespan for a big brown bat is 15 to 20 years in the wild if they make it through the first year for wildlife is hard. About 25% survive the first year, one baby once a year, right? So they're not quick to reproduce if something goes wrong. The thought is that they continue to birth all the way through their lifespan, but there's not a lot of study out there. Bats are pretty hard to track, especially the little insect-eating bats. So I think as our technology improves, we may begin to learn a little bit more about, do they go through menopause, for example, or not? So the question was, do they have a ritual before they meet up with their yeah, their boyfriend? So varies hugely with species. Mexican free-tailed bats, the guys have to learn to sing, and they have to be good at it, and they have to learn the song of the colony, and they have to be able to defend a small area, and they'll form harems. Big browns, I'm not sure what they do. The hoary bats, remember I told you they don't like to hang out with anybody? Yeah, so they form leks and mate in the air. And then that's it. They're not cuddling anywhere. Yeah. All right, I'm going to bring out the pallid bat. I got to be in the microphone because I got to be able to repeat your question. It's a good one. The bats breed each other. Yeah, I heard the question, but I have to say it into the microphone. And I moved, so because our friends at home can't hear. Yeah. Although they could have come. Just saying. Okay. So the question was, do bats preen each other? Most species do not once the young bat is old enough to take care of itself. There are some species that do. More of them seem to be our tropical bats, and that includes the vampire bat. Vampire bats do groom each other. Okay, pallid. Where are you? There we go. Yes, big ears. Big ears, big eyes. They hear well, they see well, and they often do not bother with echolocation. They're a much bigger bat, right? They hunt invertebrates that live on the ground. So these guys are after things like grasshoppers, crickets, potato bugs, scorpions, centipede, cockroaches, all kinds of ground invertebrates. Um, where are you going? You have a little mind of your own, don't you? He is using his jaw to push his body forward on my thumb. So he's not trying to bite me. If he wanted to bite me, he would. But that's not what he was doing. He was putting his jaw and then opening his mouth, and that moves, yep, propels him forward. Yeah. They fly low and slow. They identify the invertebrate, land on the ground, leap onto the invertebrate, grab it with their teeth. Sometimes they eat it right there, and sometimes they lift up off the ground and carry it someplace where they're a little bit safer because there's more predators on the ground, right? Yeah. Yeah. Do owls eat bats? An owl could catch a pallid because pallid bats hunt on the ground. We don't really have fast owls. So we do have some kind of stealthy ones. So if the bats, for example, are living on the beams in a barn, an owl might talon them, possibly, if they are hanging out too far. But that's not the big predator. I see more hawks and falcons during the crossover time, crepuscular time, right? Um, they're faster. They can turn better in the air, and some of those birds hunt aerial prey anyway. And then things that can climb trees. So raccoons. We do have some snakes that'll get bats that are in rock outcroppings. Um, jays and crows sometimes knock them out of trees. Things like that. Yeah. How many miles can they fly when they're out feeding? Again, varies with species. The pallid bat, which is the one I have in my hand, he's not going to go very far. He might go 5 or 10 miles max. Where the Mexican free-tail bats frequently fly 50 miles one way and come back. But again, if you can fly 100 miles an hour, right? And they live in massive colonies, so they have to disperse farther. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, big, wide wing, right? Whoop, says, give it back. And a big tail membrane, right? So here's the tail right there. Lots of skin that can be used kind of like parachuting over the invertebrate. And they have stronger hind legs than many of our bats, and that allows them to jump from the ground. Um, Bats can fly from the ground. That's another one of those myths that are out there. Where are you going? Uh, yep. Yeah. Where are you going? Pallid bats, when I get them into rescue, they're much easier because they hunt on the ground. So I really don't even have to teach them to eat from a bowl. They're like, oh yeah, I get it. Yeah. All right. Last one up is going to be the hoary bat over there. And walk around. Yeah, yeah. So the hoary bat is a tree species. Hoary bats live in mostly the evergreens. They love the redwoods. Yeah. Talking about it. I hear you. Yes, I do. So there's two things going on for him. One is he's just talking about it. But the other is he does like treats. And usually when he comes out, he gets fed. So he may get, if he gets to be a little feisty, I'll just give him a mealworm. Hoary bats have amazing amount of fur. They're much, much furrier than our other species. And you can see how this camouflaging would work. They also have fur under their wings and all the way down their tail membrane. Solitary. These guys are big migrators. They have been known, that's me, let go. There. Um, how do you get a bat to let go of your glove? Yeah, you blow in their face. All right, there he goes. So these guys have been known to go Alaska to Baja. And this is the only land mammal in all 50 US states, which means Hawaii. Yeah, they're the only land mammal that has made it to Hawaii on its own without the help of humans. And the thought is somewhere around 10,000 years ago, there were some big storms that blew that direction from the mainland, and enough of them survived to have established. They are a subspecies in Hawaii, the Hawaiian hoary bat. They do have a tongue. Can you stick your tongue out? No, he's not going to stick his tongue out. Yeah, he just wants to eat. These guys eat a lot of moth, but they can eat dragonflies. I mean, they can eat big bugs. Yeah, they are usually catching flying insects rather than gleaning or picking up from the ground. They tend to hunt above the tree line. And the fur color, I think, is just amazing. Yeah. Sometimes kids will say to me, it looks like the bat has a mane because it is so furry around its head. He got hit by a car and he actually lost a wing. Yeah. So he's kind of stuck with us, but how far back do the fossil records for bats go? Somewhere between 55 and 60 million years. So they're a long time ago. The problem is bat fossils or bat bones don't fossilize well. So there aren't a lot. And interestingly, right in that similar time frame, they have found them both in Wyoming and Germany. Yeah. So how far back? You know, what are we missing? Yeah. So apparently it's a good adaptation to fly. Yeah. It looked like. Oh, okay. So the question was about holes in bat wings. I have seen some really nasty wing tears heal well enough for release, but it can take months. So I've seen bats that have had tears from the wrist all the way through the bottom edge that have eventually healed back up well enough for flying and for release. Holes, sometimes they can fly with them. Sometimes they don't even need to be in rescue. If a bat can fly, we don't keep it, even if it has a hole, because things happen in the wild, and sometimes they can survive. They're going to do better in the wild than they are in captivity. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
Most of the critters started young. At what point did you just, somebody had a sick bat, you took it in?
No. So the question is kind of what made me do bats, right? So I've always loved flight. Flight fascinates me. And I love environmental education. So I've done environmental education for most of my life. And then I was hired at that bridge, the Yolo Causeway, to teach kids about wetlands and birds. And I learned about the bats. And I was in my 40s at that point, right? Completely turned my life. Yeah. And they've sort of taken over. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 You never know what direction, right? Yeah. I had dropped out of the workforce with my kids. And so when My daughter hit kindergarten. I decided I'd go back to work, and yeah, that's when life changed. Yeah. Yes. Have I done tours at Casuminus River Preserve in kayaks? Yes. I have gone both as a participant and as a speaker at that bridge. And boy, it's way better to do that by kayak than to try to stand on the Franklin Bridge because the cars are going 60 and there's no sidewalk, you know. Um, but from the water, yeah, and the Swainson's hawks are out hunting. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. At the Yolo Causeway, we tend to get some Swainsons. We also sometimes get peregrine falcons. And then here and there, we'll get a Cooper's hawk, and they also are pretty good at catching bats. Yeah. I have seen kestrels try. I haven't seen them be successful, but I don't know why. I don't know. I think that the kestrel should be. I mean, they're a falcon. They're fast. Um, it just might not be on their radar. Uh, it shouldn't be on the radar of the Swainsons. And I think the Swainson's hawks that are hunting at YOLO, I think that they actually are dispersed out of the Franklin Bridge at Cosumnes, because that was sort of, at least in the greater Sacramento area, the first place we started seeing Swainsons. So some Swainson's hawk figured it out, and then they started to see the next generations learning, and then they had enough of them that they probably needed to disperse, and they came to the other bridge. Yeah. Is there a better season of the year to see the bats at the bridges? Absolutely. Um, they are right now flying about 15 minutes after sunset, so that's hard. Um, Towards the end of June, they'll begin to birth. The freetails will. The other bats are starting to birth now. Freetails are last, usually around the end of June, and then it's about 15 minutes before sunset, and that's way better. July and August, and then once the young are really flying, they start to go back to sunset and then after. So September is still pretty good, not as good as July and August. Yeah. Yes. Are bats disrupted by human sonar? Yes. And the mention was, for example, military, but how about electric bicycles? Yes. Yeah, electric bikes put out 40 kilohertz. We don't hear it. The bats do. Hmm? I don't know what drones, probably. I mean, if a drone is sent in through the bat ribbon, it certainly completely disrupts them, but I don't know what kind of frequency they put out. But we have a lot of things that put out high frequency sound all around us that we don't notice. I go into classrooms and often I can't use my little bat detector because there's a scream from those sensors that turn the lights off when you leave the room. 40 kilohertz, and they're screaming. Yeah. And it always makes me wonder, when we have sound, even if we can't hear it, how does it affect us? Because that's waves, and those kids are in those waves all day long. Doesn't matter if the lights are what the light switches are doing. Those sensors are putting out the sound. Yeah. Yeah. So if you go to like a state park or national park or whatever, and they say you can ride your bicycle on this trail, but you can't ride your electric bike on this trail, they're protecting the wildlife. Yeah. Yeah. Not all wildlife are bothered by electric bikes, but some are. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then jackhammers, construction, all that kind of stuff will disrupt them too in the back. Huh. Sure. So I'm trying to figure out how to consolidate the question. The question is basically, why aren't you seeing bats as much this year as you have in the past? This is the time of year you should be seeing them, and then into the summer even more. Um, was there fire, forest fire anywhere around in the last couple of years? No, no. Okay. But you haven't had huge amounts of habitat loss here either. I mean, you don't have new big cities going in like we do in the valleys. So I don't know. I don't know why you're not seeing them as much. Um, don't know. Sorry. Hmm? Well, insect population is certainly affecting bats all over, everywhere. And the insect population is dropping. I was in Costa Rica a couple months ago, and one of our tour guides has been working there for 40 years. And he said the quantity of decrease, and he's rural, super rural, right? He's out of Monteverde. And, it's all protected habitat. And he said, even there. And he said, in turn, they're catching less bats. He's a bat researcher specifically. And, his belief is it's just worldwide. Um, Swallows too, sure. Anything that eats insects is going to be, if you're not eating well, you're not reproducing well. So even if the individual animal survives, if they don't reproduce well, you don't get the next generation. Yeah. Light pollution is a big deal for insects too. Not just for, it certainly affects the migration of the birds and the bats and, a lot of other things, but it affects the insects' reproductive systems, which I think is kind of scary because we need bugs. And I'm sure a lot of you probably remember having to wash your windshields way more than you do now, right? Yeah. Mhm. Yet our kids' normal is not what my normal weight, right? And then our grandkids' normal is even less. And so if my grandkids saw the insect load that I saw, if that started to happen all of a sudden, they would think there was something wrong, right? And that's kind of weird to think about. Are there questions? Some of the information I was sharing with you is on the newer end. There's been more and more attempts to monitorize bats to show the importance. And I mean, it's part, at least how some humans think, certainly money becomes important, especially when you're talking corporate, right? There was a study where it was somewhere in the Midwest, corn, and they put massive, massive fencing over a cornfield and not over the one next to it to see, and chemically treated both in the same way. But the bats couldn't get into the fencing. And the crop loss was huge. Yeah. Uh, yeah. So I thought that was really an interesting study. Are there any more on Zoom that I missed? No more. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, putting me up, letting me bring the bats. And if you're here in the room, come on up and take a peek at them before you head out. People to remember that they are still wildlife, right? What they are, not who they are.